Working in a high-tech startup in Silicon Valley is very fast-paced and exciting.
Silicon Valley is about chasing dreams about who you want to be.
Silicon Valley is a bunch of nerds trying to take over the world.
Silicon Valley is basically an all-boys school for entrepreneurs.
Silicon Valley is a place devoid of fear, fear of failure, fear of looking like a fool, and devoid of fear of taking risks.
It can be hard to manage a good balance between work and play. In Silicon Valley, there is a void exists between male and female pursuing tech career. As a result, there is a higher ratio of men compared to women. To help techies meeting potential dates, Teng, Siong and Jared stepped in to jazz up the dating scene and founded Wednesday Night.
We started Wednesday Night because we were frustrated with the dating scene. We set up drinks between two people at Wednesday Night, and we assign a matchmaker and a dating coach to you. You don't set up a profile, you don't send any messages, you don't do any scheduling, you just go out for drinks. So every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we set up those drinks.
Didn't they say don't go up to...
I visited Teng, Siong and Jared in Sunnyvale, California to learn more about their startup story.
Sunnyvale is a small town compared to like San Francisco, and this is sort of where people focus on their startups. And I think you go to San Francisco when you get a little bit bigger and funded.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like when we went through Y Combinator back in 2009, they said, you know, live here because it's close to us. And Y Combinator is like right down the street too, so it's kind of a quiet, like focused neighborhood, I guess.
Yeah, usually big companies move here when they get really big. Like there's a Yahoo down like Field Street, there's a LinkedIn. There's a
Google, Facebook.
Google,
yeah.
Twitter is going to open a new office here too. I got into programming when I was Form 1 from this friend I know since like, Standard 1. But I was from like a really small town, and there's not like a lot of like things that can help you to learn programming. And I only have like internet when I was like Form 5, which is really late compared to the rest of the people. So yeah, I'm not really like big into programming when I was like in high school. Then after that I was like, okay, I think I should like learn more about like startup and stuff. Then I started like looking up for like TechCrunch, like okay, yeah, TechCrunch like looks really interesting. It's like they talk about like all the startups in US, and there's like no one I can talk to, whereas back in Malaysia like no one was talking about startups. So I have to like learn it from like myself, like looking at all this news, and like no one like was talking about the same topic as I was talking. So I was like, okay, I think I should go to like come to US. My parents they didn't go to college, so my dad almost dropped off from like high school. Same thing for my mom too. So they gave me quite a lot of freedoms on like what I want to do. So they didn't really care as long as I'm doing like what I wanted to do. Yeah. Even now, like they have no idea what I'm actually working on. Like they don't. I mean, they don't even know how to use computer or internet themselves, but they support what I do.
Yeah. So we dropped out. We did Y Combinator in 2009 with an application. This was right when mobile was sort of like picking up. You know, when the iPhone come out initially with the App Store, and we built this app where we didn't want to read Yelp reviews. Right, like we're standing in line, I want to know what do I order at this place. And so we had shorter comments, sort of like Twitter, that when you were at the restaurant, people would just say like, order this thing, and then you would vote that comment up or down. And so we made that whole process faster of like figuring out where to go and what to get.
I can tell you from like a Malaysian's perspective who got into YC. So it was really surprising to me because I've never seen so many people who actually want to work on startups in one room before that. Back then in 2009, there wasn't many like conference or startup conference or any meetings about startups in Malaysia. So when I was in YC, I was like, wow, all these people are like really smart and they all wanted to start their own company and they're actually working on it right now. Yeah. And yeah, that was the experience that I couldn't get from Malaysia.
So the first time I got into technology was when I was 9 and I built a text-based game. And I guess gaming was sort of my gateway into this, programming and technology. And so, yeah, that was my first experience. But I wasn't really into startups until my freshman year of college, when I did some contract work, and I found that I really enjoyed doing it, and it paid me a lot more. So that's when I like first dabbled with entrepreneurship. And then I would say my sophomore year was when I joined my first startup. And so I was employee number 1 at this company called TalkBox in 2007. And it was sort of a Skype in the browser. And from that point forward, I had always been interested in startups. And so when I went back to school, that's when I started like an entrepreneurship club. That was when I met my current co-founder, Siong. And that's when I knew like I wanted to do like something that let me build things quickly and, solve problems. I was more attracted to the startup scene, the chaos, and we didn't have meetings or anything like that. We didn't have any sort of formal structure, I guess, and so we just moved really fast. And that's,
you prefer it that way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So that's what I really like about startups, is just innovating and moving very quickly and figuring things out. So Brian Chesky has always been like a role model of mine. I remember the first time I talked to him back in 2009 at Y Combinator, he was just talking about how you need to be sort of like an animal about like getting your customers to use your product, or like getting people to sign up for your service. I think like technical people don't value sales enough, or don't value like selling your product. I think you have a tendency to focus too much on the engineering and build this, from the back end and looking at the code. It's great, but you need to tell more people about it. I think everybody comes here and they want to just build things and make a positive impact on the world. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but I really think that most people are here and they want to innovate, right? And I think they probably struggle with normal jobs and bureaucracy and process. And here it's just sort of like, just try to move as quickly as you can. And innovation is sort of the, try new things out, and if it fails, like that's fine. Nobody's judging you based on your failures. It's just try to figure out something that works.
If you look at the time frame, it was a really fast period for me because, okay, think about this. Like in 2000, I came here in 2008. In 2007, I have no idea what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Then I decided, okay, I should come to like US for college. Then 2008, I was here for college. And I have no idea I'm going to like start a company that fast. I was thinking, okay, I should like at least get my degree, maybe get a job, figure out how like my visa situation was before I should start a company. Then in 2009, I was starting my own company. So it was like really fast experience for me, but it was a good one.
We had a lot of ideas for this software, and we went to Paul Graham, and Paul Graham's like a prominent figure here, and we talked to him. And he's like, you guys aren't really like passionate about this idea, and I can tell, and you should work on challenging things. Okay. And ideally you work on something that you are fixing for yourself, right? Yes. Or that you consider yourself an expert in. And so we went back home, which was here, and we're like, okay, roommate software, a bad idea. I have been using this online dating stuff for the past like 6 months, and felt like it was so frustrating to use. And so that's the point where we decided, okay, we're going to fix online dating.
A lot of startup founders, they talk about how easy to raise money in like Silicon Valley. There are a lot of money throwing around in Silicon Valley. That's not true at all. A lot of them have not been here themselves. So they thought that, okay, yeah, getting a few millions dollars is easy in Silicon Valley as long as you're in Silicon Valley. But that's not true. But you have to know, it's definitely easier than to be in Malaysia, but it's not as easy as what they think. The network here and the people here are more willing to help. So you can basically shoot an email to anyone. They will say, okay, yeah, tell me what's your problem. Even though we are like total strangers with like each other, they will still like willing like offer you to help you. But I don't think that will happen in Malaysia. Like, people in Malaysia, they have like this thing that if I help you, you have to give something back to me. Not as open as here. Yeah. Like here you can basically like talk to like anyone you want, and they were like, okay, tell me what's your problem. I will try to help. If they couldn't help, they were like, okay, I think this guy will help you. They will make introduction to like this guy or someone else. Yeah.
A friend of mine who runs a company called Dev Bootcamp gave us a check because he's like, you're right, like online dating's totally broken. Okay. Here's a check, focus on this thing, go solve the problem. And that's when we were just like, okay, well, for me, I'm in my 20s, I can afford the risk, right? And I can afford to be focusing really hard on this stuff. And it's fun, it's stressful, but it's also fun. Like there's a lot of ups and downs. But my philosophy is, you know, I can afford to take this risk. So I think it's good to like think hard about how you invest your time, right? And I think startups are a great way to make a big impact on the world. And it's harder. I think it's harder to do as you get older, because you know you're not taking a check right every month. Somebody's not paying you, and you have to go out and like hustle for the sales. And so I think it only gets harder, right? And I think if you're going to start a company and you're in your 20s, for example, why not, right? Okay. Like nothing to lose. So.
Hyperthought. No, not the hyper. We already talked about Iron Man visualization. Yes.
Later in the week, Teng, Siong and Jared invited me to witness the production of their side project, Hacker Nation, at the headquarters of Backplane in Palo Alto.
We go by pseudonyms from here on out.
All right. Reach out to all my military.
So Hacker Nation was started because there was actually another program called Dig Nation. And when Dig came out, Dig was one of the original news websites that gave the power to the people. So people would upvote stories that they thought were interesting. And there was a show called Dig Nation. And Dig Nation was Kevin Rose and Alex Albrecht talking about the top Dig stories. And we thought, there's nothing like this for Hacker News. And Hacker News is it's a top website. It's a website where hackers and programmers get their information from. And so we thought, why don't we talk about the top stories on Hacker News? And we've done 3 episodes now. We just sort of do it when we have the time. And you know, the latest episode, I talked about the NSA.
I talked about the Tesla Model S.
It's stuff that people are interested in. Like tens of thousands of people read this story about the NSA, and we're just sort of reflecting back on what people are interested in talking about, right? So the NSA was the #1 story in Hacker News for the past week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is having a conversation about what we think about that story. So, you know, I talked about the NSA and I thought they were, you know, crossing some boundaries. And, you know, some people, they have a different perspective on it and they think, you know, the NSA is trying to protect us and all that, but I think there's something about the hacker mentality that sort of drives this, you know, contrarian viewpoint where they question a lot of things, and they sort of wonder, are we going a little bit too far?
Right.
And so, I think the stories we talk about on Hacker News are pretty representative of what all the readers think about.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, just to summarize what Jared said. We take all these links from Hacker News and we like the top links of the week, and we talk about them, we discuss them. You know, sometimes we have a debate. Like in our current, you know, in our last episode, we were talking about the NSA, and there's different viewpoints that some of the guys on the show had. Yeah, and if you guys want to check out Hacker News, that's news.ycombinator.com.
So basically, we've like created the easiest way to learn AngularJS, this programming framework.
What's AngularJS?
So it's a JavaScript framework from Google.
Okay.
And so basically, they've done a lot of awesome stuff to make developing front end web apps way better. So like if you're making a single page app, just makes it super easy in a lot of ways and takes care of a lot of stuff.
Okay. Hi, my name is June. I'm originally from Orange County. I co-founded a startup with one of my friends that I met when I was an intern at Apple last year. So we specialize in making weapon technology, weapon systems technology for law enforcement and the military. And our aim is basically to help train as well as target acquisitions for them.
Hi, I'm Siong. I'm the camera guy behind Hacker Nation TV. So I create the website, I manage the website, I manage the YouTube channel. I help upload the video to YouTube, then create a new post about it, blast it to all the users, subscribers through emails. Yep.
The old one.
No.
Actually, it looks worse.
It looks exactly like eBay's new
We're not
logo.
even going to talk about that.
So recently, there's this video about Elon Musk. Obviously, I hope a lot of people on Hacker News watched it, but my story specifically is on the Tesla Model S outperforming the Aston Martin.
Through the introduction of Siong, I visited Block at their office in San Francisco. Block is an online apprenticeship designed to teach the fundamentals of web development over the course of 12 weeks. Together, Roshan and Dave envision to reboot education.
So I've always been passionate about the concept of accelerated learning. And I think especially in modern days where you have entire industries that are being created and destroyed in the span of 5 to 10 years, it's going to be more and more important for us to come up with a way to continue to educate our society without having to go back to a university and take 4 years of college. I think that model just no longer works, and there's other people out there who are working on similar problems like that. Like there's Udacity and Coursera and Code School and Code Academy. But I guess what we've learned through our experience is that there's a reason why if you want to become a doctor, you can't just read a couple textbooks, you have to actually work underneath a doctor. And we think that you just can't really remove that human element. And while our competitors are a little more famous than us, I think we ultimately have the right solution because we figured out a way to bring that human element online in a way that's really high quality and leads to successful results for our students. I think it's not that surprising if you think about programmers. A big driving force behind like the programmer mentality is all about productivity and automating things that you don't like doing and being at peak performance. And people have learned that like sound body, sound mind is a real thing. So programmers are actually really into taking care of themselves.
I was at a coffee shop when I was working on Django. I was at a coffee shop and I had a little Illinois sticker on my laptop because I had gone to school there. A guy walks up to me, he's probably 50 or so. He walks up and he says, "Did you go to Illinois?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I'm, Bob Jones. I'm a VC." I said, "Oh, nice to meet you, Bob." And he said, "Let me, what are you working on there?" So we had a chat about what I was working on. I think I was working on Django at the time with Samir, who was also from Illinois. And yeah, we got to chatting. He gave me his business card. We exchanged information, and he told me if I ever needed help fundraising or was looking to fundraise or whatever, give him a call. That's why I came to San Francisco, is because if you're doing a startup in New York or Chicago or Atlanta or Austin or any of these other places that are sort of trying to get something going, and in many cases they're doing it a little bit, but there's nothing like Silicon Valley. I like programming a lot in general. I think I'm very lucky, as I think we all are, to be able to program at work. And so when it comes to coding, it's kind of sometimes hard to draw the line where the work stops and the fun begins.
Dave and I used to disagree about this a lot, actually, the whole work-life balance question. I think, especially in Silicon Valley, it's kind of fetishized for you to be this person who can put in 100-hour work weeks. There's this one guy, Elon Musk, that everyone talks about, and he just constantly talks about how he puts in 100 hours a week, and that's the secret to his success, is that he's just this machine. And I used to think that that was something that was possible and also a necessity to start a successful startup, but I've since changed my mind about that. I think the hardest thing about doing a startup is managing your own psychology and fighting burnout and fighting the inevitable depression when things don't work out. And a lot of times those kind of things are just outside of your control. And so really the best thing you can do is kind of force yourself to have some work-life balance. And you don't have to go to the opposite side of the spectrum where you're working 30 hours a week, but I don't know, forcing yourself to get out of the office by like 6 p.m. or something. And I personally like try to get in, I don't know, 3 or 4 days of like playing basketball whenever I go home and do something completely unrelated from work. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I think everything has highs and lows. You know, I think every job on earth has highs and lows. I think doing startups has high highs and low lows. So I think it's just sort of accentuated. And how do you cope during the lows? That's the hardest part. There's nothing harder than that, I think. The lows can happen on a daily basis or an hourly basis or a weekly basis, and they can happen when it comes to different things. You may be very optimistic about the company as a whole and your role in it, but very pessimistic about this, maybe a certain person's performance or your own performance or whatever. Personally, the way I deal with this is I do not overwork myself. It's very, very popular right now to sort of pull all-nighters and hack all the time. It's referred to as hustle mode. You're in the hustle mode, and I hate that. I think it's unhealthy. I think it's not sustainable in the long term. So I probably take the most time off of anybody here. I just went to Italy for a week and a half with my family. I went backpacking this weekend. I try to maintain a sane schedule. I get up early. I get up early for Silicon Valley. I get up early at like 7, and I leave work at 5 to 6. I think that's very rare in Silicon Valley for people my age doing what I'm doing. That helps a lot. I don't feel like I'm working a lot. I'm working a lot, but I don't feel like I'm being overworked.
I think a problem for a lot of startups is that they think they need funding before they're ready to raise funding. I know for us, the first time we raised, we kind of just got lucky in that we found someone who is really passionate about our idea, but most investors are kind of looking for someone who is a little more proven and they found a model that works. Maybe they already have customers who are paying for them. Maybe they've been developing this idea for 6 months and they've gone through a bunch of experimentation and they finally have found this product market fit and they can prove that they're solving a real need. And I think a lot of people think that it's more like you come up with an idea and you instantly go and try to ask someone for $1 million, which you hear all these stories of like people raising $1 million, $45 million, and so you think that it's really easy, but I don't know, it's actually really hard. You'd imagine that asking someone for $45 million is actually really, really hard, and it is as hard as you'd imagine it to be. So yeah, I think that it can be made a lot easier if you try to focus on the fundamentals of proving your business model first. And you should be in a position where you don't really need to raise money because you have a profitable business. And things end up being a lot easier from there.
Well, while you guys are programming, I mean, as a programmer, do you guys face any problems? Not problems, I mean, face any challenges in...
Are you asking us about our dating lives?
Yeah. That's what she's going to
Sure.
I need to go into detail, just like whether or not you find it difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have like time for dating. I think that's the biggest thing.
My family gives me crap every time I go home or I see them, like any girls in your life, and I always sort of roll my eyes and say no. And it's not because like, yeah, I think this is actually a unique thing in San Francisco, to be honest. I think everywhere else I've gone, it's not as it's not to say that it's difficult. I don't think it's difficult. I think it's just a question of priorities. You know, I think a lot of people would rather. It's kind of crazy, but you know, a lot of people would rather be building the passions of their lives rather than dating right now in San Francisco.
The sense of community is definitely really helpful. There's a lot of unique problems that entrepreneurs face, and you know, in the same way that for our students it's really hard to remove the human element when you're trying to learn web development, it's kind of the same thing for startups. You can't really remove that human element, and it really helps to have other founders to talk to, venture capitalists who have kind of gone through that whole routine themselves. And what you'll find is that all the common advice out there for entrepreneurs ends up being strikingly true. So you can really not really cut corners, but you can definitely learn a lot about what you're about to go through if you talk to people who've already done it before. And you can really only find those kind of people in Silicon Valley.
Failure is underrated. I think failure is like the best thing that can happen to people. I think most people live their day-to-day lives with this gripping fear. You don't realize that you live with it. But whether it's in school or your job, I think there's this fear of screwing things up. And I think it's actually an unhealthy fear. I think if you screw stuff up, you learn from it. That's, in fact, you could argue that that's when you learn the most, right? So I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm never going to fail. In fact, I know that I will fail, and I hope that I will fail in certain ways, because I know that's how you learn the most.
Next week, in Life in the Valley, the digital gold rush.
There are cafes everywhere in Silicon Valley, and every time you sit down at a cafe, chances are you will hear someone on the next table pitching a new startup idea.
The idea is that San Francisco, we could maintain ourselves as the innovation capital of the world. Would be the main goal.
But in general, I think it's really good to be around like-minded, ambitious people that are working on fun things. You know, you get like a good energy boost when you're around people that are doing that.